So what we're going to do now with this client is going to be a little bit different, a bit tricky from the last client that we had. The last client we had was pretty easy. It was, this straightforward positioning graph, and you could really easily see it. But now you have a company, at least in this case, this company is a hybrid of sorts. They have tutoring services and they have educational and institutional strategy, right? So they combine two services together. They have two services together. They want to, put that under one name or one company, basically. And so how does this relate into the market? Well, in order for us to find out exactly where the white space would be, you have to first look at both markets separately, right? Both landscapes separately. There are two types of landscapes here that we're looking at. First, the online tutoring space, right here, which is the one we already did for point-on tutoring, which was my last client. And then now we have the educational consulting space, which is more around, people with educational strategy, institutional strategy, right? And right now I'm checking out the trends between both and seeing where the similarities are. This is a bit difficult for me because I've never really understood, how to combine two graphs together. So what I'll do when I figured it out, I probably put it here on this big one here, so we really, map out the landscape of what's going on here. So right now, the education consultant companies, their whole thing is, some are really small and localized, one person, two person, and then there's big international companies who do this consulting internationally for tons of companies, executive companies or businesses really, for their education, but also for schools internationally, having international strategy for schools, right? And there's more emphasis on worldly strategy, basically, at the moment. And I gotta find out what the other extremes are at the moment. But so far it's coming along. It's an interesting and challenging project, but I will get back to you when we can see the results of this positioning graph and the competitive audit. So I just had a eureka moment in this positioning part of the strategy, and basically what I was looking at college prep consulting companies and then educational strategy consulting companies, which are working with institutions and whatnot. And then I saw the similarity, and the similarity is they only fix one issue only, right? So one consulting company focuses on working on leadership, the other one focuses on getting a kid into college, right? But they're both consulting companies, but they're only fixing one aspect of school or one aspect of the school journey. And so that's really key here. So this can already start, I think this part here is where we're going to really start fixing our attention on, because it's at a district level and it works to fit those two things in tandem with each other. So the brand strategy session we've had, and now going in back to the positioning of this company, we decided that basically what I found out during this entire thing, and looking back at the sort of recordings and whatnot, wanted to first kind of separate the two positionings together because I didn't want to combine everything just yet. And so, we have here basically him as a tutoring company, him as a strategic education advising company. You can see the two extremes here between each of them, and how he stands up in the marketplace basically at the moment. So not much competition here, not much competition. It's not as cluttered as the tutoring industry, but there are still a few or 4 or 5 competitors that mainly make up the strategic education advisory uh, space, or whatever it is, right? Um, and so, really, just getting back to this whole thing, it's been a day since going through this type of stuff, and we had just recently had the naming session, and it just brought up a lot of interesting things to me, because during the naming session we really had some interesting insights pop up, like, how everything, benefits everyone, and what does that even mean, right? So that started to really get an interesting idea of what this was going to be named, and also what was going to be the main idea behind it, or the main message, or the USP behind it. So when I start to get through here all this type of stuff, really understanding, he gave a lot about his successes with, you know, uh, with these type of people, and how he helped people learn by appealing to their interests. I thought that was really an interesting thing, like, influencing them and teaching them, learning if they like a certain subject, or they like a thing, like, oh, the kid likes cars, or the kid likes trains, or whatever. I'm gonna read everything about trains to appeal to him and teach him, right, and make it fun basically. And there's a lot of speed and big and fast sort of thing, and safe and predictable sort of things here, so it's pretty good. Um, and then at this part here really came down to, saving money, creating efficient school systems. So a lot of interesting stuff so far. And we actually did the naming session back here. So yeah, ton of naming. There's definitely going to be a video on this about naming, and it's going to be really interesting. So right now, working through the strategy at the moment, and basically what this is going to be. And I think I finally figured out what the whole thing was. So we ended up, instead of doing it together, which is what was our previous sort of assumption, is to combine the two companies together into one singular company with the strategy and tutoring and whatnot, and then now we keep these two separate, but have them have similar context, similar themes, similar ideas that all go through it, right? Consistency is incredibly important, because if you put two things apart and they don't seem consistent, and you're the one running both of them, then what's the point, right? And if it's not consistent to your target market, then what's the point, right? So you need to know that these two companies have similarities involved. They come from the same, what the fuck is that? They come from the uh, same thing. They come from the same uh, root, or same strategy route, I guess. The same, yeah, the same main idea, same main USP. Um, And so going through the recap here, just doing some recapping. I had actually, in this one, I actually did, in the brand elements, I added a new sort of framework. Not technically new, but it was more so escape and arrival. This is from Frank Kern, and Frank Kern talks about how, people want to escape from a different place, escape from their current bad situation to get to a current good situation. And so we mapped out all the different sort of target markets between each of the target markets, and how they get to a result, right? So the first one being, well, the first one being, uh, fixing remedial issues. How does that work? Diagnosing learning time, getting the best tutor, providing exercises, real world testing, so they could get to a place that matters to them, right? So escape from a child not performing well to arriving to a child in school, and then finally going through the so it's basically created in two levels of timelines, right? So timeline one is basically big picture. Timeline two is, milestones. So you have milestones within each one right? That's a timeline within a timeline, basically. And then you have the emotional timeline, which basically is calls what Frank Kern calls conducive relief. And conducive relief basically meaning is saying, oh, the person that you're trying to market to at the moment can feel the effects of what is possible and the effects of the arrived state, in their mind very, very quickly. Humans very easily are able to understand and see from, from a present point of view, the future, right? They're always thinking about the future. We're always thinking about the future and what type of things are going to happen tomorrow and whatnot, right? So our mind is in this constant need of knowing what's going to happen ahead and what is the desired state. You're always trying to escape from something, right? You're always trying to look forward into the future ahead. And that's what you can take advantage of, is you can start creating content or creating parts and pieces of things that can help um, understand that these things, can help a person feel, especially the person in the moment. Let's say this parent can feel in the moment some relief, knowing, okay, this is possible. Okay, this has been shown. There's proof that this has been shown. Okay, oh, does it work this way, right? Oh, we're breaking down the patterns of learning issues, right? Your issue's not unique. It's happened before, right? Oh, it's happened before, so that means it's possible, right? So again, it's all about creating conducive relief and creating that emotional sort of thing that says, oh, it is possible. It is possible for me that I'm right now in this current state. I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling down on myself or whatever. There's a problem. I'm feeling frustrated. I can definitely get to this step by step. And the content that we're going to put out is going to create that internal decision making in the target markets that we're going after, and it will help in the way that it will help them make the decision themselves, making more of a powerful connection to the brand and to the service that my client is selling at the moment, which is tutoring and educational services. So, and then go for the brand elements. Everything's here, you know. Um, and yeah, this is really just how I, present now brand strategy or whatever, is really, the main thing is just put out the frameworks, right, that you've used, recap them, understand what insights you got from them, and then any frameworks you've done, again, put out an insight about them, and then, put, then finalize the USP and the unique selling point, and then talk about the values, the voice and tone, and the look and feel, which is the visual part, and then any marketing audits that matter within that point of view, right? So you you really just want to keep it as simple as possible. You don't want to overwhelm the client with a bunch of unnecessary stuff, just the necessary stuff that's going to be put externally, and then some stuff that is internally, which is the purpose and maybe even the values, right? But those are internal, those are your things, those are, things that keep yourself aligned. And when you bring on employees or you bring on people, they know that you stand for this, and so it's much easier to put everyone under a singular vision to succeed to a goal or to create a better, performing business in general. So the concept we're going here, and really the unique selling point that's going to happen here, is that it's a streamlined strategic education, right? And basically what that means is that um, it's educational strategy or education services or whatever that help cut the fat from, school systems and learning issues and, tutoring issues, etc. all together, really. And that's the main thing. It's the whole common ground that everything comes from, is that my client can, create this type of, effect that, more, kids can learn faster and more efficient, by learning stuff that they're interested in, and then the schools and the parents that want to plan for college, they can get more fast and efficient learners because they're he's creating and his company's creating strategies that cut the fat of all education, return back to the basics, cut any silly innovations out, and in the meantime immediately put it out, immediately help students, I mean parents and schools, save a lot more time and money in general. And no one can say that, to time and money, right? They can't say no to time and money. So really, if we think about it, is that The struggle I was having here with this target market or this client really, with this client really, was that the fact is that everybody's been calling themselves creating self learners. Everyone wants to create a self learner, or there's a lot of language that's been overused in the education space, and then when we come across something like that, we have to find ways to twist it around and make it a new claim, right? Ultimately, what he's doing is creating people who are self-learners, but the fact of the matter is, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. That's the case. You know, it matters that it has to be different and distinct to the target market, right? Because everyone's heard the same crap over time, right? And most companies now, and these ones, especially the educational consulting companies, they're only focusing on the results they created, the grants they've won, all this type of stuff, which is fine, but it doesn't get to the heart of the problem, right? The grants you win, the people you put into college, it doesn't get to the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is the system in general and the way you're treating education or learning in general. And the problem is no one is addressing that. That's the whole truth that my client is going to bring into the market. So, in essence, what we really need to have is that thing throughout everything that we do, right? And so that will formulate the naming strategies, the way the website's created, and the design concepts that we're going to start creating now. And I'm going to start creating and going in and making, right? So that's really it. It was an interesting client to do work with, and it's an interesting client to do work with. I'm really excited about what's going to happen when we start pushing this positioning out and we start creating really relevant messaging and content that works for these type of people. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this works out for them.